You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. We've been making cheese in Wisconsin since before we were even a state, which may be one reason why we win so many awards for it. It's what happens when a whole state dreams in cheese. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cutting the Curd on Heritage Radio Network. I am your host, Joe Salonia. Today is September 30th. It's a wonderful day because it's my son Jesse's birthday. Shout out to Jesse if you're listening. But today there is a looming threat hedging on the International Longshoremen Association strike, which is about to set at midnight tonight. We don't know the outcome, and we won't know the outcome until later tomorrow or later in the week, but it can't ever mean a good thing. And we just hope that the outcome is quick and so that imports can continue. It's over a wage dispute, for those of you that don't know. And to put it in context, 43% of our country's imports are in the hands of this, looming issue over wage disputes with the International Longshoremen Association and the USA Maritime Association. I might have the names incorrect slightly, but that's the basic gist. But on a positive note, we're going to escape from that reality for just about an hour or so, because joining us on today's show is Emma Young, who is a cheese consultant and author based in the UK. Emma is known as the Cheese Explorer on social media, where you can follow her cheese-related adventures. And her first book, The Cheese Wheel, is a guide to the flavors found in cheeses and the best drinks to pair with them. Emma has 15 years of experience in all aspects of the cheese industry, as well as being an international cheese judge and a teacher in both France and the UK. Emma, welcome to Cutting the Curd.
Hello, thank you very much. What a nice welcome.
It's so nice to hear your voice. I find the English accent charming, so that only adds for me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one listening who doesn't mind hearing your English accent, especially if you're going to talk about cheese. And I've been following you along with about 25,000 other people on Instagram, I think, these last few years. We might have first met in Bra, maybe 2017, for the Slow Food Cheese Festival some years back. And I've just picked up a copy of your book. Congratulations.
Thank you kindly.
Lovely little tome, no pun intended. And in my opinion, it's great for beginners in cheese. And it's also great for the cheese pros looking for a fresh perspective. And this beautifully small, I would call it a rather small book, not too hard to tackle. You could always keep it at your side and refer to it. And what inspired you to write the Cheese Wheel book?
Well, firstly, I hope that the tome pun was intended because it was good.
All right.
Secondly, it was, so thank you. It's a book which I put together and wrote over a few months last year. So it came out last year, but it has recently been released in the US, which is very exciting. And it is a book which I actually was commissioned to write. So Penguin Random House asked me to put together a cheese book based on a loose idea that they had internally. But what was great about the working together with them is that they chose a person who worked on, basically it was my book. It was a really, really lovely match because it was everything that I kind of stand for and everything I like to teach and write about. So it was a really easy way to work together and they let me do what I wanted, essentially. So the inspiration behind it, I've wanted to write a book for about 5-6 years, but I've never really been able to find the correct angle or the correct focus. So hopefully there'll be another book in the pipeline which will encompass those ideas. But for this one, they wanted a cheese book based around flavour. So the book is, as you know, it's called The Cheese Wheel. And in the inside pages, in the inside and in the back pages, it's a visual cheese wheel which is based on the chapters of the book. So there are 6 inner cogs, which are the 6 chapters, and they're based on cheese style. And within those, I have put together common flavour profiles and then 110 cheeses from around the world which have those flavours, those as their dominant flavour profile. So the premise of the book is to link cheeses by flavour profile instead of geographical location, which is a slightly different angle to lots of other books, as you'll know, as you'll all know. So it's quite fun. It's things like, why is a paneer similar to a mozzarella in terms of flavour? And then I go into a lot of depth in sensory analysis, how to taste cheese and the flavours which you should expect in certain cheeses, what to pair and what you should try next. So exactly as you said, Joe, it's great to sort of sit down and have a little flick through. It's not one that I know many people have sat down and read as a novel, but it's quite nice to sort of dip in and out. Is that what you've been doing?
Yeah, I've been dipping in and out. Exactly that. I really like the structure of the book, and I feel that anybody new in cheese, like if you're listening and you're new in the cheese business, you most definitely need to pick this book up, because it'll arm you with a lot of good dialogue, a lot of good words. It'll add to your lexicon, and what's cool, I think, is that you took this very familiar looking tasting wheel, like we've seen them for famous cheeses, right? Yeah. You've seen maybe for Comté or Lagrère OP. I've seen them for beer, where it's just mostly adjectives on there. But then this is where you've linked in actual names of cheeses on the outside. But I do love the way you, in the center, like you've mentioned, these 6 kind of chapters, if you will. Yeah. Where you're getting into that's the center, and then it branches out even into flavors like cream, umami, vegetal, fruit, animal, piquant, malt, and then there's like subcategories I've noticed.
Exactly. So yes, exactly all of that. I think what I've really enjoyed about putting this together is definitely having chapters which are based around flavour, but also why they taste. Where do these flavours come from? So that's something that's interested me for a long time, is why do we taste strawberries? How does this one taste like mushrooms? What's going on? Why am I tasting things which aren't in the cheese? So a lot of the beginning of each chapter is revolving around explanations into a bit of the science side, but as you said, very approachable, very sort of reachable for anyone. It's not a professional book as such, but professionals have come to me and said that they've really enjoyed sort of learning bits and pieces from it as well. But the flavour aspect is something I really, really enjoy learning about.
Yeah, and so, but then comes the writing part. I mean, writing, conceptualizing it is one thing. Have you been a writer in past, things in past roles that you've had, whether in cheese or not in cheese?
So I actually started when I was at university. I studied linguistics, so I've always enjoyed language, and I've always enjoyed writing. And at the beginning of my career in cheese, I would put together blog posts. I'd write things for my own learning and to teach my staff when I started other jobs, which involved training. But the Instagram side, the Cheese Explorer Instagram account, has been very much putting together a very short amount of text to encapsulate what happens in a specific event as such. So if I'm doing a post on cheese making, I have to write in however many words you're allowed on social media, a full sort of biopsy. But I really do enjoy doing that. And I've written lots of articles for Culture Cheese magazine, for Cheese Connoisseur magazine, for a few newspapers in the UK as well. And that's sort of cropping up more and more. It's something I really, really enjoy doing.
Right. So writing is definitely in your wheelhouse. No pun intended.
No, look at you with all your puns.
Oh, I'm the pun king today. And there's a guy I follow on Instagram. He's got this thing with puns. He'll make a pun out of anything. But I digress. So let's back up a second. So you're in Paris at the moment.
Yes.
Let's just put a pin in that for a second because we want to hear why. But where do you reside?
I am London-based. So I live in London, and I've lived in London my whole life. I work with lots of clients in London as well, but I travel a lot, as you'll know, and as we'll discuss in a minute. But cheese, wherever cheese is where I will go. But I sort of dip in and out and work a lot in London at home as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty cheese-rich city to be in. And then you're in Paris. I mean, that's also a pretty cheese-rich city. But I think, I mean, lots of, I mean, I'm curious to know, and I hope I share this curiosity with our listeners, is how did you get into this world of cheese? Like, what got you here?
It's a similar story to, I think, lots of other people who've got into cheese, because it's not the most typical career path. You don't wake up and go to school in England or in most countries and decide I'm going to study cheese and work in cheese. So lots of us come from different angles. And it was actually just a part-time job whilst I was at university. So the first cheese role was working in a deli in London, just as a part-time job to fund London partying, which is expensive. So I wanted to do something which was quite unrelated to my degree. And I had a brief moment of, what do I like? I like cheese. I'm going to work in a cheese shop. And that it was as simple as that to start with. But also, which I actually forgot about until recent years, my parents had a cheese shop when I was a baby. So this is no, it's something, because it's so removed from what I do now, and it's something that I wasn't involved in. I don't remember. It's not something that I sort of attribute to my career, but I wonder if sitting in a cheese shop as a baby, smelling Munster and all of these beautiful cheeses, may have had some sort of unassociated memory. I have no idea.
I'd have to believe so. You quite literally were born into it, but you didn't know this until you became an adult. Is that what you're trying to get at?
Pretty much. So I was a baby, so really, really young, sort of sitting in a pram, like in a, what do you call them, pushchair kind of thing in the shop. So I don't remember any of it. I've seen photos, and my parents have talked to me about it in the past, but it's just something I completely forgot until I started writing the book and talking to my mum, and she said, you remember we did have a shop? Oh my gosh, no, I didn't remember.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I might say that there's this strange thing that I would call it rather strange and rare that we might share in common in some other adjacent way. Like I didn't know that my grandparents owned a diner until I was in my 20s, after they had passed and everything. And then I remember my mother and just casually saying, we were talking about some kind of food or something, like an omelet or something. And my mother said, my dad's name is Joe also. She goes, Joe, what was that omelet your father used to make at the diner when they owned the diner? And I'm like, whoa.
What
did you just say?
Yeah.
Anyway, but I digress. Not about me. Just cool. You made me think of it.
No, it's great. I wonder, it must have some sort of, I don't know, some unconscious memory of sorts, but no, it's quite a romantic thought, but maybe it is a thing as well. Maybe it's full of a shop of aromas of cheese, lots of visual stimuli. I have no idea.
It's something for all of us to have an introspection about. I think all of our listeners may want to ponder upon that. Yeah. But I think cheese, most of us have in common in the cheese world that cheese, no matter who we are, it kind of happened to us. It's like one of those careers that kind of happens to you, that chooses you more than you choose it. And it sounds like, was that deli job the specific moment that sparked your interest, where you said, you know what, this is it for me? Or was there a more impactful moment where you're like, this can be my life? Like, what was it?
It was quite a weird revelation. So I've always loved cheese. I've always eaten a lot of cheese, and my family were all Francophiles. We'd travel and visit France. We'd go to Normandy and Brittany sort of 2 or 3 times a year. So I was surrounded by cheese for a long time, but I never thought or even realized that it could be a career. But when I worked in that cheese shop, it was just something that really attracted me. It was something that I spent a lot of time learning and reading about, even though I should have been studying probably more about my own degree. And I think whilst I was sort of coming to the end of the degree, which I did finish, I think it was just a realization of, oh my goodness, this is something I really, really do enjoy. And I became, as I sort of started to meet more people, to talk to distributors, I was very lucky to judge cheese from a very early moment in my career. I crossed lots of paths with people who discussed and explained their backgrounds, how they came into cheese and what they did. And I realized that, gosh, I could actually do cheese. This is great. I love cheese. And it wasn't like a bing revelation, eureka moment as such, but it started to develop where I realized that I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go in cheese, but I knew that it was something that I had an incredibly large passion for. So that was my first job in a deli, where I was a deli assistant. I was cutting and wrapping, cheesemongering, and working quite closely with the buyer above me. But it was my next job where I sort of really started cementing the skills of being a cheesemonger, visiting lots of cheesemakers on my days off, going to cheese events and doing lots of self-study. So that was the moment at which I started to really immerse myself.
Yeah, you mentioned like judging cheese at any competition. That's one way to meet lots of people quickly, whether it was intentional or not, isn't it? It's just always a lot of backgrounds in one room, incredible energy. I can't imagine. So now, but you're in Paris. We arranged a call in Paris. I was expecting to be speaking to you in the UK. Are you in Paris often? A lot?
At the moment, this has been quite a busy summer. So I've had lots of events. I've had lots of festivals where I've been working, lots of cheese visits, which has been great. This weekend's been quite a bizarre one. I actually came over to Paris for a concert. So it was slightly cheese related. I mean, it was completely cheese related because I was over here with someone who was putting together all of the cheese boxes. But it was actually for music this time, not specifically for cheese. But yeah, I travel a lot. Paris is a huge capital for cheese shops, for innovation, for trends in cheese, and it's something I really enjoy. And it's just sort of been a base for all of my travel out in France at the minute. But it's not Paris isn't my only destination. It's just happened quite a lot in the last few weeks, months even. Yeah.
They're kind of closely related topics, close to my heart: music, cheese, and then the way ticket sales have gone for some artists. Sometimes it's cheaper to go to another country to see your favorite artist.
Absolutely, that's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true for other things too. But so does this add? Like, how often are you in a cheese shop, or like what is, if you take if you take a wheel and you divide it into pie slices, what percentage of the pie are you doing certain things? Would you mind sharing with us?
Yeah, it's fluctuated quite a lot this year, so it's changed a lot. But the main principle of the job I do now, so I worked a lot in retail in the past. I've worked in wholesale as well, but for the last 4 years, I've actually started my own business where I'm consulting and I'm helping people in different places. So London a lot, the UK a lot, and in other countries to open cheese shops to help cheesemongers learn to go in and deep dive into cheese. But I'd say percentage-wise, I am in cheese shops a lot because a lot of what I do involves training people on the job in their sites, helping them open from scratch, training their staff on how to cut, present, serve cheese, etc. And I also do lots of training for businesses. So and every time I get a moment and I get a call from a cheesemonger, Mons in the UK, so Mons cheesemongers, when they call me and ask if I can do we call them mercenary shifts, I jump at it because I just love being behind the counter. It's one of my favourite things to do. So even though it's not my priority in terms of my main job, I'm really still closely related to the counter, and I love that interaction with the customers and getting the cheese message across to the final consumer. So I'd say, I don't know, like maybe 40% of my time maybe is in some sort of cheese retail or cheese retail environment, if you will.
Yeah, well, that's noble work. I mean, it's funny. I think like whenever I want to try to, take some role of leading or teaching, what I notice is I like to think this happens that I learn the most in that role. It's really funny. It's almost like I feel like I'm the biggest student in the bunch, even though my job is to maybe lead, because you're really you're really refining and understanding and seeing the reactions or the guests in the store, what they really want, or where their hearts are, or how much you really steer them towards one thing or the other. Are they open? Are they closed-minded? Are they open to new things? But do you, in this, algorithm, this amalgam, if you will, are you noticing any emerging trends in the cheese world that you want to share, or that you're excited about, or not excited about even?
I think I completely agree with you in terms of the learning side, just as a little add-on there, in terms of how when you're teaching, you want to make sure that you know everything about a subject, which you know a lot about already, but you do end up, exactly as you said, learning the most. And also you sort of learn from those interactions with people, and the questions they ask back are really exciting because they're sometimes questions you won't have thought of, because the people you're interacting with may not necessarily be long-term cheese professionals, or they might be the general public. So I find that really exciting when they throw back a weird curveball, and it makes me go down another sort of spiral to learn more. But yeah, that was just a little addendum. I think it's nice to keep us on our toes, and we're never going to learn everything. It's a huge subject. In terms of trends, well, I've been fortunate to travel a lot this year. So I spent some time in Brazil. I've spent a lot of time, as you said, in Paris, in France, and I've even judged at a couple of competitions in the last few weeks in Spain and Italy. And there are lots of emerging trends, and there are lots of, I'd say maybe more than trends, enhancements of categories which already exist. For instance, in Brazil, that was really exciting because it was a country I knew nothing about in terms of cheese. There were one or two that I knew about. One's in the book, actually, Canastra, and the rest was a completely blank canvas. So I was invited out there to judge at a cheese competition, it was 3 competitions. It was best cheesemonger, and best affineur of cheese. So what was really exciting was to have quite a blank canvas to start with, but then to see, even within that remit of, okay, I understand a bit more about what exists in this country, to then see the evolution which had already started to happen. So what I enjoyed in Brazil was a lot of innovation in the I think it was called like an affineur competition, where each cheese maker had to make 3 different iterations of a specific cheese. So it was really fun, and they were super creative with, and it was great. There was lots of flavor additions, but in an incredibly intelligent and in a non-gimmicky way. So that's a big trend that I've seen in lots of countries, is flavor additions which aren't just Wensleydale with cranberries or espresso martini and poo cheddar. So it's been really nice to see people getting a bit more experimental, but to realize that you can do things with cheese where you're essentially creating a recipe as a chef would in a restaurant. You're not trying to change a cheese completely. You're making something different, and you're using specific flavors and ingredients to go alongside each other, which will complement and to create something new. So in Brazil, the thing that really stuck out the most for me was a cheesemaker who made 3 things using passion fruit, which was quite a bizarre flavor combination. But they made a tome style, so a sort of Saint-Nectaire, tome de Savoie style, where they'd where they sort of infused it with passion fruit, and it was absolutely sensational. It was as if they had really worked on the balance of the flavor to work with the flavor of the cheese to the point where you didn't really realize that it was an addition. Yeah, so it was just like, fruity. When you find pineapple in Etiva or strawberry in other cheeses, it was like that, but they'd done it intentionally, which was absolutely bonkers.
Like a kind of the way you'd see it, maybe a well-made craft beer with just a little scent of cardamom or orange rind or something like it. Not an inclusion per se.
Absolutely the same thing, exactly. Yeah. It was absolutely brilliant. And I've seen a lot of that in Brazil. They did some really fun things. I've seen it a bit in Spain a couple of weeks ago. And obviously Paris is the capital for these beautiful creations. If you go to shops like, if you go to shops like Laurent Dubois, if you go to Quatre, there's loads where they have these beautiful creations where they have a cheese with things going alongside it or on top or inside. And it's like you're in a patisserie.
I had the pleasure of visiting a Dubois shop once, and I still remember this Roquefort that they sliced medially maybe twice, and then just embedded some perfect Membrillo in there, and then repacked it. And so now when you sliced it through, you had every other, like about a quarter inch of Roquefort, Membrillo, things like that, right?
Exactly that. That's his signature. We were actually eating that about 20 minutes ago. Well, before. Well,
oh my God, that's so funny.
Not that long ago. But yeah, exactly those kind of things where, yes, those are two elements which work well together, but they're put together beautifully. Or something a little bit on trend like yuzu, or something. What did I have recently? I had some Saint-Nectaire at a producer even, and they put it with cumin. They put sprinkled some cumin on top, and I can't remember the other spice, but it was just a perfect combination. So I'm excited about that as a trend, because it's something as cheesemongers we can be quite snobby about. I think it's something, especially in the UK, because there are some questionable examples of flavour added cheeses. So I think it's really nice to see those which are absolutely next level elevations of specific products, and they're not trying to hide a bad cheese. They're not trying to put together something gimmicky. It's, as you would see in a restaurant, it's a recipe.
Yeah, it sounds like that's more about the craft of coaxing the flavors to work than it is about just simply adding something into a paste of a cheese, I guess.
Exactly that. Exactly.
And so that could be, I mean, thank you for that amazing answer. I've kind of really, you can kind of see that moving. And so maybe that could be something that evolves over the next 5 or 10 years. We will see, huh?
I definitely see it happening in lots of places. It's something I've really wanted to happen in the UK for a long time, in a non-industrial way, not just not industrial, but in this, we're not just putting something in a base cheese, but we are, exactly as you explained, putting together the flavors. So as we've talked about with my book, it's something I really like to look at, is why does this taste this way? Or this has a flavor of strawberry. What could work with that? And what could look visually beautiful as well as tasting excellent? So I definitely think that's one to watch, and it's something I'm seeing creeping up in lots of places. So that's a trend I'm excited about, because I really didn't like it so much in the past.
Fascinating. I love the way you framed it out too. But hey, let's just put a pin in that. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese. There's a reason when you think of Wisconsin, you think cheese. Cheese is a huge part of Wisconsin's history and future. In Wisconsin, the state of cheese, the tradition of cheese-making excellence began 180 years ago, before Wisconsin was recognized as a state. Immigrants traveled to settle in this lush green hills of Wisconsin, bringing their cheese-making traditions with them. These storied skills, combined with the freshest milk available, created a cheese-making culture that is uniquely Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 1,200 cheesemakers, many of whom are third and fourth generation, continue to pass on old world traditions while adopting modern innovations in cheese-making craftsmanship. Find your next favorite cheese at wisconsincheese.com.
Okay, we are back, and we're chatting here with Emma Young, the cheese explorer, talking about her explorations in cheese here on Cutting the Curd. Before the break, we were just talking a little bit about the trends that you've seen, or the one trend of this kind of coaxing flavors into or out of the combinations, almost creating like an alchemy within alchemy with certain ingredients, but not necessarily inclusions, and playing to the theme of your book about why cheese can taste a certain way, whether it's through the land or through the breeds, or maybe this having been the reason. Does this kind of content make its way into the courses that you teach, and maybe remind me and the listeners that you teach cheese courses with is it with Mons and Mons Formation?
Yeah, exactly. So I teach a couple of different classes. So three different elements. So I do a lot of bespoke work as a consultant. So if anyone asks me to put together a training course for them, it's something I'll either direct them towards my already established courses like Mons, or I'll put together a training program. So I'm really open to working with new clients. I've started talking to people in the US, and it's quite nice to sort of cross-pollinate between different cultures where we've got lots in common, but lots we can learn from each other. So that's one element. Second is, as you mentioned, Mons Formation. So I've worked at Mons in the UK. So I was a wholesale manager for 5 years. I've got Mons tattooed on my neck. I haven't actually, but it is sort of running through my veins, in my blood. And over the last few years, I've been, actually only last year and this year, I've started teaching their retail courses with Laurent Mons at the Mons Caves in the Auvergne in France. So that's a couple of times a year. So we do week-long courses, but it's only, we put on, I think we do sort of 2 or 3 of each course per year. And it's really, really intimate. It's for 6 students maximum. And you get both myself and Laurent Mons teaching for a week. You spend lots of time with us in a classroom learning the theoretical side of cheese and retail, but we also spend lots of time doing some practical work. So in the caves in Mons, in the tunnel, seeing the affinage, in one of their cheese shops, which I really enjoy. So we get to go and set up the cheese shop with all of the Mons staff as they restart for the week. So it's incredibly sort of hands-on in terms of not just learning the theoretical side of retail, but being able to learn alongside professionals and to see it in context in a business. So I've actually sold out the next course, which is in April next year, but I have dates which are on my website and on the Mons Formation website, and they're all Anglophone courses. So they're open to anyone who can speak English, and they are, as I said, a week long. I've got students on the next one coming from Australia, Taiwan, 1 person from the USA, 2 from Sweden. It's a really lovely mix as well. So yeah, that's another course. Yeah.
And they take place in the UK?
No, in France.
Oh, in France. Okay. But the English will still be the language. You'll be leading with English.
Yeah, we do both. So Laurent teaches in French. I teach in English. I translate for him. So all of the content for those weeks are in English. There are other partners with Mons who teach in other languages, but I'm in charge of the Anglophone sector. So they're all in France on site and in a really lovely location. And we spend a week together. We go and play with some animals. We eat lots of cheese, have a nice time. And yeah, it's great fun.
Sounds wonderful. And who would typically attend these types of classes? Is it a mix of different backgrounds, or is it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's designed for retail professionals. So we haven't really said no to anyone unless it hasn't been the right idea for that person. We do several different courses. So there's usually one course which will work for someone if the one they've signed up for doesn't work. So the sort of designated target audience for these courses is people who work in retail, who have just started a retail career, who are looking to expand into retail if they're a cheesemaker. And there's 2 levels. So Cheesemonger Fundamentals is based at that sort of more entry level or cementing knowledge. And there's we call Big Cheese course, which is designed for managerial roles for those going into a more overlooking managerial type sector in cheese. So as long as there's a link to retail, where shops are mainly it's been people who are opening cheese shops or who run cheese shops and want to send their staff to learn some more. And the Big Cheese course has been really fun as well, where we've had people who are cheesemakers who have started to retail a bit, because it's quite nice if you've got the space, if the logistics work, to have a shop attached to your production facility, which is something that happens quite a lot in certain countries. So I've had cheesemakers on board, which has been great fun to sort of learn from a very different perspective, but it's been a really, really sort of enriching exchange with everyone, because they can talk about a sector that we're not as familiar with, and then they can learn all of the ins and outs of how to physically put together, present, look after their cheese, which they know how to make with their eyes shut.
Mm-hmm. And do you say you have your toe dipped in the water for USA with this concept, or you're feeling it out, or you're?
So, I mean, I at the moment, the Mons course is only in Mons, but we've had several people, well, quite a lot of people come over from the US to do this course. So I'd love to have more. It's always really exciting to learn more about the US market. I've done my CCP as well. So it's something where I've sort of started dipping my toe into learning a bit more about the American style of cheesemongering, cheesemaking, etc., and all of your regulations. So it's a nice exchange, and it's not something that we would bring over just yet. But as I said, I do bespoke courses. So even if it wasn't the Mons course, it's something that I'm always open to discussing with people. So I'm very fortunate in the way that I work in my consulting, is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all project. So I'm always always happy to look into ideas. If someone has I think I want to do this kind of idea, then we can flesh it out. I can come over. It's something I'd really love to do. And if anyone from the US does want to sign up, as I said, the dates for the Mons Formation are on my website and on the Mons Formation website. So happy to chat through that with anyone if they did want to reach out.
The spectrum is huge here in the USA, where education is kind of all over the board, mostly driven by companies who value education, where maybe their collection, aside from their collection being of value just in and of itself, there's a lot to learn around that. But there's no one size fits all for sure. And I encourage anyone listening that sounds good to get in. If they want to get in touch with you, I mean, we'll mention this at the end, but like, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I mean, my website is the main sort of hub for everything. It's got all my contact details and my class dates on. So that's just cheeseexplorer.com, not thecheeseexplorer.com. But if anyone reaches out through Instagram, where I am the Cheese Explorer, I'll just sort of redirect. So I'm always looking at all different channels, but I'd say that the easiest option is cheeseexplorer.com, and there you can see everything in terms of dates and contact details and contact page, etc. So yeah, I love the sound of this. I mean, I'm all for cheese support, education, helping to raise profiles, raise consciousness, raise better cheese care, and just sharing insights. Just in a total exchange of helpful information. There's so much out there that could be shared more often and more deeply. But switching gears just a tiny bit, what advice, like how would this, because there's a lot of aspiring cheesemongers out there, cheese professionals, a lot of them are very bright and motivated. They're interested in career growth. What would be like a bit of advice you could give them if you had maybe a group of them sitting in front of you right now? What would you like to tell them? I mean, I've come from quite a get involved with everything and immerse yourself type of mentality. So the way I worked, I, as I said, would go and visit cheesemakers. I'd do lots of self-study. I'd write my own notes and write together blog posts, even if they weren't going out to anyone, just to enrich my own knowledge and to sort of revise as if I was learning for a specific purpose. But I'd say the best thing is to look at any events which might be going on around you. You've got a really strong community with like the American Cheese Society. So lots of events happen around different regions and states in the US. I'd say anything that you can go to is a great place to meet people and to learn about what you can do, or just to connect with people in the world of cheese, to just hang out really and to learn a bit more. But I'd say definitely a lot of the old self-study. If you can get to a cheesemaker, I don't know how simple that is in the US. But if you can, that's incredibly enriching for really solidifying how cheese is made and seeing how it all works. And I'd also say, as cheesemongers, the goal for our customers is for them to get something that they really like eating and that tastes good. So eat all the cheese is my main advice. Taste all the cheese on your counter, or go and buy cheese from a different shop. do your own little tastings, maybe host a party, but even just tasting on your own and putting together some notes is a good place to start, which will increase your vocabulary. It will get you sort of accustomed to certain flavors in styles of cheese, and just start building a bit of a memory bank of flavor. As that's the main thing we need to get across to the final customers. We're matchmaking, aren't we, really, as cheesemongers? So what do you like? I like this. This is perfect. Oh my goodness, you've made my Saturday. So tasting cheese is the biggest part. Making cheese if you can, going to events and meeting people, reading lots of literature. You have lots of great books in the US. There's lots which are written and being released in the UK at the moment and in other English-speaking countries. So get nerdy.
Yeah, getting nerdy. I think just start with visiting a dairy, and all the things you talked about could even be simply a path.
Yeah.
And now you're passionate about cheese pairings, and this concept of pairing cheese. I mean, it's as old as time, right? And it's a very universal concept. But you have a more of an angle and a more strategic way that you approach this. You've included, I think you've included, I saw somewhere you were just on site with an apple cider maker. Is that correct?
What have I done? Who did I visit with cider? I mean, I have done some cider pairings recently, but exactly that I get to do lots of pairings with, if we're looking at drinks to start with, I work a lot with different appellations, so sort of like the Carver Regulatory Board with sherry. And that side is me putting together some boomph for really fun purposes, but also for them to be able to use in their literature and in getting across a different message to their customers of what can go with their drinks. So it's sort of mutually beneficial. They come to me and ask for pairings. We have a nice time and eat lots of cheese and drink some booze. And I've done lots of non-alcoholic pairings recently. That's a big trend, which isn't necessarily cheese related, but it's something that I've done a lot of pairing with because it's getting increasingly more popular, and the quality of drinks and sort of availability and variety of non-alcoholic either alternatives or just drinks which don't contain alcohol is enormous at the moment.
Super. And it's not a way to used to be a logical way to save a few bucks on your check, but not anymore. They charge in the full price just like a regular drink. So don't let that be the reason.
No,
but I'm glad it exists.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a great thing, and some people are really clever with flavors. I've had some outstanding, really, really sort of low kombucha alcohol level meads and kombucha styles. I've had, what else did I have recently? I was at a beer festival, but they had a non-alcoholic section, and there were some outstanding ferments from Sweden. There's just some really cool things out there. Yeah. So in terms of drinks, there's
lovely elixirs, right? I mean, exactly. I love reaching for something. I just don't want alcohol. I mean, I do drink alcohol on occasion, but I many times just would prefer not to. But I do want something that's, not just going to be boring. So thankfully there's more things out there.
It's exciting, especially in a culture as England is, where we are in the pub several times a week. It's quite nice to not just have to order a lemonade or have some water. It's nice to have lots more options these days where you can get more creative. Lots of mixologists are working on mocktails, and it's quite an exciting thing. And then, in terms of putting together how to pair, so as you said in the book, there's ways of pairing things, but also on each cheese entry I've put together an example of what goes with it. And the thought process behind that was to not give, some of them are quite specific, so this exact wine from this domain goes well with this, but also to do some more removed pairings. So an aromatic white wine like Torrontés, for instance, as a more sort of removed pairing, just to show which types of wine or non-alcoholic drinks or flavor profiles go well with specific types of cheeses and cheese textures and cheese fat content and strength. There's lots that you can play around with in terms of pairing. So it's a huge, huge open canvas out there in the same way as the flavor additions.
I find it to be very resourceful because many times I'll be in a restaurant where there's a just a gorgeous selection of cocktails. But if you pick the wrong cocktail and you start eating heavy food, it could really backfire on you. So getting those little pointers on even just how you see cheese pairing up with some mixed drinks or mocktails is very valuable to me and insightful. And I like the way you do keep some of the pairings just, super general, but in the same line, you'll name something specific.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good restaurant comment, because when I'm out in a restaurant going to eat somewhere, or if I'm just at home thinking about what to cook, a lot of it is based on memory banks. So I won't be necessarily cooking something that's with cheese, but I know what flavors have worked together within cheese and cheese pairings. So you kind of start to create this enormous web of flavor that you can then relate to other types of food or drink. And it's quite interesting when I go to a restaurant and think, oh, this is great. What shall I drink with it? Oh my goodness, it is like this. It's very fatty, so this should work well. Or relating it to another flavor memory in the past. It's quite nice to be able to dot in and out and to pull from different memories that you've had. It's fun.
So does this lead to patterns, or do you have a favorite accompaniment that you like to always find as your tried and true, or a certain way to, if you're stuck, you can always go with this one type of pairing that just seems to kill it all the time, or something lately that's been hot you want to mention?
So in terms of pairing, if we're looking at sort of cheese and drinks, the basis is to either match or to contrast. So matching strength and acidity and strength level, etc. But with contrast, you're looking at salt versus sweet. So the sort of no-brainer pairings are the most typical, like Roquefort and Sauternes, or Stilton and Port. So anything with a bit of residual sugar, some sweetness, any sort of fortified botrytized, anything with a bit of sweetness will always go with something salty. And 9.99999 times out of 10 will go well with a blue cheese. So if you're looking for a no-brainer pairing, blue and sweet, it just works. In terms of things which are a little bit harder to pair, I'm a huge bubbles fan, and I think that it's something that's really exciting to look at in terms of different styles. So people say champagne works well with X, but champagne is exactly the same as cheese in that it isn't one style. So it's what kind of champagne, what kind of style is it? Is it more brioche? Is it more citrus? Is it blah, blah, blah? So what I think is exciting there, and it's not very helpful for your answer, is that there are lots of different ways to pair. But for advice, I'd say go with the no-brainers, which are to match strength, acidity, sort of flavor, textures, etc., or to contrast completely. And salt sweet is just the easiest way to go.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that you give more than one or two suggestions for every single cheese, and a lot of the cheeses, listeners, that I like to say that you mentioned, a lot of them are iconic, famous cheeses. Some are a little more obscure, but it's very, like I said, very, very user friendly for someone new, and also a good perspective for someone who's been in cheese for a while. So. Yeah. So with all this, is there an upcoming project or something that you're excited to share that we didn't mention? What's going on? What's going to happen in the next 6-7 months?
Do you know what? I wish I knew more. So I've got lots of, I'm at a really interesting junction at the moment where I'm starting some new collaborations, or I've started to share ideas and start collaborations with specific people in different countries, which is exciting, but nothing solidified in that way that I can really mention just yet. But there's lots coming up. I'm really enjoying the cross-pollination side. So I'd love to do more with the US market, especially now the book is out in the US. I'm really planning on coming out and maybe visiting some cheese shops. It is available if you do want to sell it in a cheese shop as well. So if there's anyone listening who does own a cheese shop or a retail outlet, it is available. And again, contact me sort of through my website for that, and I can put you in contact with my publisher. But there's some lots and lots of opportunities for some fun things. I'm definitely doing a lot more with drinks. That's a given. I'm doing a lot of things with French cheese, with the French Dairy Board, and some cheesemongers and producers and regulatory boards. But there's a lot of beginnings right now. So,
what about Japan? Have you thought about going there? I mean, I want to get someone from Japan on the show. It's just some cheese going on over there.
Exactly. Japan is my what would you call it? Like my my dream next destination. It's somewhere I really do want to go. As you said, the cheese scene out there is fabulous. So thinking about Japan and cheese, it's not really something that we think of at all in terms of existing and standing culture, even though they do have some history of some really long-standing cheeses. But now they are at an incredibly exciting juncture where there's lots of new cheesemakers. There's incredibly well-made artisanal cheeses, lots and lots of flavor creations. I just want to go to Japan anyway to eat the whole country.
Oh, seriously? Oh my God! I want to win.
Cheese.
I want to go to Japan just to eat, and and I wouldn't mind exploring to see where there could be a cheese there. But my goodness, that's all. Only reason you need is just to go eat.
There's so much. If you want any recommendations, let me know. I actually did a post, I think it was last couple of years ago on my Instagram. I'll pop it on my stories actually, and so you can see it. But it is a big tasting of Japanese cheeses, and they are exceptional and very varied. There isn't a specific style. They make lots of cheeses which are influenced from the continent, from sort of more established cheese styles like Bloomy Rinds or Blues or Gouda styles, but there's some really exciting and innovative and new concepts as well. So yeah, I completely agree with you on Japan.
Yeah, there was a Japanese-made raclette. I'm sorry I don't remember the producer's name, but we could look it up and maybe put it in the notes. But there's a Japanese-made raclette that made the top 20 in the World Cheese Championship contest in Wisconsin past March. Yeah, that was really, I was so excited to see that. But yeah, I mean, there's just, hey, you're literally exploring the world of cheese. I guess that's why your moniker is the Cheese Explorer.
It's worked quite well. I didn't mean it to start with, so that it was just a quite fun name, but I actually am living up to it. So I'm very fortunate in that way.
Well, I hope you'll come back and join us again. And I really, Emma, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And it's great to hear what's going on in your cheese world and your teachings and your book.
Thank you so much. And yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back. We can chat pairings or something really exciting. So Yeah, if you're in New York, you got to let us know. Maybe we could do it in person. Who knows? That would be great. All right, cheese friends. You can follow Emma on Instagram and TikTok at The Cheese Explorer. And attention, cheese shops, if you didn't hear it before, you can purchase Emma's book by contacting her at www.cheeseexplorer.com. The book is called The Cheese Wheel. You could sell it in your store, or you can get in touch via email with Emma by writing emma@thecheeseexplorer.com. And for the general public and cheese fans listening, The Cheese Wheel by Emma Young is available on Amazon, or ask your favorite cheese shop to bring it in for you. And additionally, you could follow us on Instagram at Cutting the Curd. You could follow Heritage Radio at Heritage_Radio, and follow me at Sting Chef. Please hit the subscribe button to Cutting the Curd via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you enjoy the show, please give us a glowing 5-star review. It will really help us broaden our audience. Okay, thanks again, everyone. And if you love someone, send them cheese.
Cutting the Curd is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.